Right now, your hands might feel as though they are still clutching the frayed ends of 1,000 tangled threads. Perhaps there is a subtle, persistent ache in your palms, the phantom tension of someone who has spent the entire day trying to pull life into a shape that refuses to hold. You are listening to this because the weight of needing to solve your own existence has become heavier than the actual life you are living. The room around you might be dark, and the air may be cool against your skin, but your inner world is loud with the sound of spinning wheels and clicking wooden parts. You have been acting as both the weaver and the loom, constantly straining to ensure that not a single strand falls out of place. It is exhausting to be the architect of your own peace while simultaneously trying to manage the chaos of every tomorrow. You are not broken because you feel this fatigue. You are not failing because the pattern keeps shifting under your touch. What you are experiencing is simply the natural result of trying to control the wind with your bare fingers. We will not attempt to fix anything this evening. There is no list of tasks to complete, no complicated spiritual technique to master, and no requirement for you to suddenly become serene. We are going to look at the work of being alive from a different angle. The Buddhist insight we will explore tonight is this: peace does not arrive when you finally succeed in sorting every knot. Peace arrives the moment you realize that the tapestry is weaving itself, and you are merely the hand resting gently upon the shuttle. When you stop pulling so hard, the threads often find their own way. The very anxiety that tells you to hold on tighter is the only thing preventing you from seeing that the design is already whole. You do not need to construct a better version of yourself before you are allowed to rest. You do not need to understand every detail of your future to deserve this silence. The exhaustion you feel is just the friction of your resistance against the way things are unfolding. Take a slow, unforced rhythm into your lungs. Let your chest expand without effort, and let the air leave you without needing to control the pace of its departure. Feel the surface beneath you, the solid weight of your body settling into the mattress, and notice how the earth holds you without asking for anything in return. You have spent so long bracing yourself, preparing for the next potential tangle, that your muscles have forgotten how to release their grip. Imagine that you are sitting in a quiet wooden mountain hut at twilight. Outside, the world is fading into a soft, deep blue. Inside, there is only the rhythmic wooden clicking of an old loom, a sound that has repeated for generations. There is a smell of dry cedar and old, worn silk hanging in the air. You are here to sit, not to work. You are here to watch, not to manage. The loom continues its work whether you watch it or not, and the fabric of your life continues to move forward even if you stop pulling on the threads. Maybe you came here because you feel that if you let go for even a single moment, everything will unravel into a mess you can never repair. This is the common fear of the weaver. We believe our vigilance is the only thing standing between us and catastrophe. But consider this, dear friend. What if the knots you are fighting are not signs of failure, but simply the natural texture of a life that is actually being lived? When you look closely at the most beautiful fabric, you see that the patterns are created by the crossing of many different threads. Some of them pulled tight, some of them loose, some of them dark, and some of them light. If every thread were perfectly straight and perfectly controlled, the fabric would be stiff and lifeless. The depth of the cloth comes from the way the threads intersect. Your life is not a mistake to be corrected. It is a work of art that is currently in motion. You are not being asked to stop the weaving, but only to change your relationship to the shuttle. Notice the muscles in your jaw. Often, we carry the need to solve our problems right there, in the clenching of the teeth, in the bracing of the neck. Allow those small muscles to soften just a little. You do not need to do this perfectly. Even a slight loosening is enough. There is a sense of safety here that you have not allowed yourself to feel in a long time. It is a safety that does not depend on your performance or your ability to predict the future. It is a safety that comes from returning to the present moment, to the simple rhythmic act of breathing. Your breath is the only thread that truly belongs to this exact moment. Every other thought is a thread from the past or a thread from the future, woven into a story that is not happening right now. When you focus on the breath, you are not ignoring your life. You are simply returning to the center of the loom, where the work is actually happening. It might feel strange to stop, because you are so used to the constant motion of your mind. You are used to the internal dialogue that says you must be doing more, or you must be doing it differently. That voice is like a weaver who has forgotten how to stop, who continues to move the shuttle even when the sun has gone down and the light is too dim to see. It is not a bad voice, it is just a tired one. It is trying to protect you in its own clumsy way from the fear that you might lose control. But you cannot lose control of something that was never truly yours to manage. The river flows because it is a river, not because you are directing every drop of water. The seasons turn because they are seasons, not because you are prompting them to change. Your life is moving according to a deeper, ancient rhythm, and you are invited to trust that rhythm instead of fighting it. You are safe enough to soften your hands now. Imagine that you are holding a single, delicate thread of silk. You are holding it so tightly that your knuckles have turned white, and you are afraid that if you move even a fraction of an inch, the thread will snap. Now, imagine simply relaxing your fingers, not letting go completely, but just relaxing the pressure. Feel the thread still resting in your hand, but notice how the tension leaves your arm when you stop pulling. You are still connected to the thread. You are still present with your life, but you are no longer the source of the strain. This is the shift we are moving toward together. It is a small shift, almost invisible, but it changes everything about how you experience the quiet. You do not have to solve your whole life tonight. You only have to sit here in this wooden hut and listen to the rhythmic, comforting sound of the loom as it continues its work without your interference. Every sound, every sensation, every breath is a part of this unfolding. You are held by this moment, not by the weight of your own effort. As we prepare to move into the first story of the Weaver, let yourself settle deeper into the quiet. There is nowhere else you need to be. The threads of your life are already exactly where they need to be. And for this hour, you are permitted to let the loom work while you simply rest. In a high valley, where the air is always thin and smells faintly of crushed pine needles, there lived a weaver named Kalen. Kalen was known throughout the mountain villages for the strength of his cloth. People traveled for days just to own a blanket he had crafted, because they said his work never frayed and never fell apart. But Kalen himself knew the secret of his endurance. He lived in a small wooden hut that overlooked a steep, rocky ravine. Inside his loom was his only companion. It was an ancient structure made of dark, polished oak that had been smoothed by decades of his own nervous touch. Kalen had a singular habit. He kept a ball of raw, unspun silk beside him, and whenever he felt the pressure of a deadline or the sting of a criticism, he would take a strand of that silk and pull it until the fibers groaned. He believed that if he could just keep the tension perfect, if he could monitor every single crossing of the warp and the weft with his own unwavering gaze, then his life would remain as flawless as his tapestries. One afternoon, the wind began to howl through the ravine, rattling the cedar shingles of his roof. Kalen was struggling with a complex pattern, his eyes dry from hours of squinting, his fingers stiff and sore. He felt a sudden, sharp knot form in the center of his work. His heart began to race. He reached for the silk thread to adjust the tension, but his hands were shaking. The more he tugged at the tangled section, the tighter the knot became. He pulled harder, his breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts, convinced that if he could not fix this error, the entire piece would be ruined. He felt as though he were physically unraveling, just like the silk in his hand. It was in this moment of rising panic that he heard a soft, rhythmic scratching against his door. It was the sound of a broom moving steadily across the wooden porch. Kalen opened the door to find an old, sightless woman standing there. She held an old bamboo broom in one hand and a heavy, rusted iron shuttle in the other. She had come from the lower monastery to clear the mountain paths before the winter snows. She did not introduce herself, and she did not ask if she could come in. She simply stepped across the threshold, her feet finding the floorboards with a strange, unerring grace. She walked directly to the loom, stopped, and tilted her head. She seemed to listen to the heavy, frantic vibration of the wood. Kalen stood by the door, his hands still cramped into claws from holding the thread, his chest tight with the effort of trying to maintain his perfect control. The woman set her broom down and reached out with her free hand. She did not touch the fabric. Instead, she placed her palm on the edge of the loom and felt the tremor in the wood. She laughed, a sound like dry leaves skittering on stone. She held out the iron shuttle toward Kalen. It was a heavy, cold object, shaped like a small, blunt boat, used to carry the thread across the gap of the loom. Kalen looked at it, confused. He did not need a shuttle. He was already drowning in his own threads. She nudged his hand until he took it. The iron was biting cold, and it felt impossibly heavy for such a small thing. She turned away from him and began to walk around the room, feeling the walls, the bench, and the piles of discarded silk. She spoke then, her voice low and steady, as if she were speaking to the room itself rather than to him. She asked him why he was still carrying the shuttle when the work had stopped moving. Kalen looked down at his own hands. He realized with a start that his fingers were still locked around the silk he had been trying to fix. He had been holding that thread for so long he had forgotten he was holding anything at all. He had been clutching the past errors and the future expectations, turning them into a physical weight that drained the strength from his arms. The woman sat on a wooden stool near the hearth. She told him that she had spent her life clearing paths that others had walked upon, and she had learned that the most difficult stones to move were not the ones on the ground, but the ones people carried in their minds. She gestured to the knot in his loom. She told him that the knot was not an enemy. It was just a place where the threads had decided to meet. He was trying to force them apart, she said, but he was only tightening the grip of his own fear. She took the iron shuttle back from him and placed it on the floor. It made a dull, final sound against the wood. She told him that the loom needed him to be a companion, not a tyrant. She then turned her back to him and began to hum a slow, wordless melody that seemed to vibrate through the very floorboards. Kalen stayed perfectly still. The room felt different now that the iron object was no longer in his hand. He looked at the knot in the silk, really looked at it. For the first time in hours, he saw that it was not a disaster. It was simply a deviation in the pattern. He did not reach for it. He did not pull it. He simply let his hands drop to his sides. His shoulders, which had been locked near his ears, began to descend. He felt the ache of the tension leaving his muscles, a slow, wave-like sensation that washed down his arms and into his chest. He realized that the world had not ended just because he had stopped pulling. The sun was still setting outside the mountain window, casting long orange shadows across his workspace. The wind had stopped its aggressive rattling, and in its place was a profound, waiting silence. He noticed the old woman's breathing. It was long, slow, and completely rhythmic, unaffected by the chaos of the afternoon. She was still humming, and the sound seemed to weave through the threads of his loom, softening the sharp edges of his anxiety. Kalen did not know what to say. He was afraid that if he spoke, the tension would return, like a ghost creeping back into his fingers. So he stayed quiet. He watched the way the light played on the tangled silk. Without his interference, the threads seemed to shimmer, settling into a new arrangement that he had not planned, but that felt in some strange way to be exactly what was required. He realized that he had been so busy managing the weave that he had forgotten to participate in the act of being present. He was the weaver, yes, but he was also the thread, and he was also the loom, and all of it, for the first time in years, was allowed to simply rest in the fading light. This story is not a request for you to stop caring about your life. It is not asking you to become cold or indifferent or to abandon the goals that matter to you. That is a common misunderstanding of what it means to find peace. The story of Kalen and the blind weaver is simply pointing to the difference between living your life and trying to master it from a place of fear. You see, the exhaustion Kalen felt was not coming from the loom itself, or even from the complex patterns he was trying to create. It came from the way he gripped his tools. It came from the belief that if he did not constantly monitor every single thread with his own nervous energy, the entire tapestry would fall apart. He had turned the simple act of weaving into a desperate struggle against the possibility of error. When you look at your own days, you might see that you do the exact same thing. You hold your responsibilities, your relationships, and your future plans as if they were fragile, fraying silk that only your constant tension can keep together. You might feel that your vigilance is the only thing standing between you and some unknown disaster. But notice what happened in the story. When Kalen stopped pulling on the thread, the tapestry did not unravel. It simply continued to exist. The world did not collapse because he finally let his hands rest. The pattern was already being supported by the structure of the loom itself. You are not the sole architect of your life, and you are not responsible for holding the universe together. Suffering often arrives in two stages. The first stage is the initial difficulty, the knot in the thread, the life situation that does not go the way you wanted, or the moment when reality surprises you. We cannot always prevent these first moments. They are part of being alive. But the second stage of suffering is what we add afterward. It is the layer of judgment, the panic, the internal stories that tell us we are failing, the restless attempt to force the world to behave in a way that feels safe. This second layer is entirely created by the mind. It is the sound of you pulling on a thread that is already secure. It is the habit of clutching the iron shuttle even when you are not working. When we talk about letting go, we are not talking about giving up. We are talking about releasing that second, unnecessary layer of strain. Think of it as opening your hand. You are still touching the thread. You are still present with your life. You are still weaving. But you are no longer squeezing the life out of your own experience. You are no longer adding your own fear to the existing challenges. This is the difference between struggling against the current and learning how to float with it. The current is going to move regardless of how hard you fight. If you fight, you only exhaust yourself. If you soften, you begin to see the direction the water is actually taking. The wisdom here is that your anxiety is often a form of misplaced love. You worry because you care. You plan because you want to protect what is precious. You hold on because you are afraid of loss. There is a deep human beauty in that impulse, but it has become a habit that is now causing you more harm than good. You have taught your mind that to care is to suffer. You have taught your body that to be responsible is to be in a constant state of bracing. You have mistakenly believed that if you stop feeling the weight of the work, you have stopped doing the work. But the truth is much softer. You can be deeply involved in your life without needing to control every single outcome. Consider the metaphor of the iron shuttle. It is a necessary tool, a useful object that helps the threads cross. It is not an evil thing. But when Kalen carried it with him while he walked, while he sat, even while he tried to rest, it became a burden. You have tools in your life too. Your ability to plan, your memory, your ambition, your desire for safety. These are all useful shuttles. They help you build your days. But are you still holding them when you are lying here in the dark? Are you still carrying the weight of your decisions, your to-do lists, and your unfinished tasks into the space where you are supposed to be resting? The teaching is not to throw the shuttle away. It is to learn when to set it down. You do not have to know the final design of the tapestry right now. You do not even have to know what the next row of stitches will look like. The weaver in our story showed us that the most important quality is not the intensity of our grip, but the quality of our attention. When she walked into the room, she did not look at the pattern. She felt the vibration of the room. She noticed the tension that had gathered in the wood. She listened to the hum of the space. When you learn to bring that same quality of attention to your own mind, you stop looking at the knots as disasters and start seeing them as part of the texture of your life. This does not mean your life will suddenly become easy. It means you will become steadier. It means that when you see a knot, your first reaction will not be to panic. It will be to pause. It will be to notice the tension in your own shoulders, the heat in your own palms, and the speed of your own breath. And in that pause, you will find the freedom to act with clarity instead of reaction. You will find the freedom to set down the heavy iron shuttle and pick up something lighter. You will find that the tapestry does not need your desperate pulling to be beautiful. It only needs your patient presence. It is natural to feel afraid when you first consider this. You might worry that if you stop pulling, you will drift away, or you will lose your way, or you will become someone who no longer matters. But look at the end of the story. Kalen was not less of a weaver. He was more of one. He was finally seeing what he was creating instead of just managing the anxiety of the process. He was actually resting in the work instead of being consumed by it. This is the state of mind that we are inviting into your own quiet space tonight. It is a state of mind that says, I am here, I am working, I am living, but I am not fighting the life I am meant to be part of. There is a profound relief in realizing that you are not the entire source of your own life. You are a part of a much larger, more graceful system. Just as the mountain breeze moves through the valley without needing a plan, your life moves through time with its own inherent flow. When you stop resisting that flow, you find that the knots in your own life often begin to loosen on their own. They are just places where things had bunched up because of your own fear. Once you offer those places a little more space, a little more air, and a little more patience, the threads often find their way back into the pattern. You have been doing a lot of work. You have been holding on for a long time. You have been carrying the shuttle of your responsibilities long after the sun has gone down. It is time to set that weight on the floor. It is time to let the wood of the loom be the thing that bears the burden, not your own tired arms. You are not required to have the answers. Tonight, you are not required to fix the past or secure the future. You are only required to be here, to breathe with the quiet rhythm of this moment, and to let the tapestry of your life continue to weave itself in the darkness. You are safe enough to let go. You are safe enough to see that nothing is actually falling apart. You are simply learning to be a different kind of weaver, one who trusts the pattern more than the panic. As we prepare to move into a quiet practice, feel the weight of your body deepening into the mattress. Feel the room holding you. Everything is exactly as it is, and for now, that is enough. Now we shall invite this insight to sit with you in the quiet. There is nothing you must do to earn this stillness. You do not need to empty your mind, and you do not need to banish your worries. We are going to practice the art of the weaver, not by changing the threads, but by changing how we hold the loom. If it feels right, allow your eyelids to grow heavy. Let your body sink further into the support beneath you, trusting that the earth and the mattress are capable of holding your weight without any effort from you. Imagine that your mind is the wooden frame of the loom, and your thoughts are the threads that have been stretched taut by the intensity of your day. Notice, if you can, the places where you are still pulling. Perhaps it is the tightness in your forehead, or the shallow rhythm of your chest, or the way your fingers are curled against your palms. You have been holding these threads with such fierce devotion, believing that to stop pulling is to lose everything. Just for this moment, I invite you to see what happens when you simply soften your grip. You do not have to let go of the threads entirely. You only have to stop tugging. Feel the muscles in your shoulders begin to lengthen, like silk being unspooled from a heavy roll. Let the tension drip away, like rain falling from a roof into the quiet earth below. Bring your awareness to one specific worry that has been recurring tonight. Maybe it is a choice you made, or a conversation that lingers, or a plan you feel you must refine. Do not try to solve it. Do not try to analyze why it troubles you. Simply name the pattern. You might say to yourself silently, this is the feeling of needing to control, or perhaps, this is the feeling of being afraid of the outcome. By naming it, you are not engaging with it. You are simply stepping back from the loom to see the thread for what it is. You are the one watching the weaving, not the one being woven. Now, imagine that heavy iron shuttle we spoke of earlier. It sits there, cold and solid, on the wooden floor of your inner room. Take that worry, that specific knot in your mind, and gently, slowly, place it into the hollow of that iron shuttle. Do not throw it. Do not cast it away with frustration. Place it there with a kind, steady movement. Feel the weight of it, the reality of it, but notice that it is no longer in your hand. It is resting on the floor. It is being held by the structure of the room, not by the strength of your own muscles. Look at it there, on the floor, and realize that you are still you, even without holding that shuttle. The loom of your life continues to function. The threads continue to cross. The pattern is still unfolding, whether you are gripping the iron or leaving it behind. If your mind wanders back to the thread, if you find your fingers twitching to reach down and pick up the worry again, that is perfectly fine. It is only the habit of the weaver, a memory of a time when you thought you had to do everything yourself. Notice the urge, acknowledge it with a soft breath, and then return your attention to the feeling of your body resting. You are not failing if you pick up the shuttle again. You are simply practicing the release. You are learning that you have the choice to put it down. The iron is cold and the wood is steady, and you are here, breathing, alive, and fundamentally unchanged by the burdens you have set aside. Maybe you feel a sense of guilt, the lingering suspicion that if you stop pulling, you are being irresponsible. That is only the voice of the old pattern, the fear that says love must look like exhaustion. But look at how much clearer your vision becomes when you stop squinting at the knots. See how the room seems to settle into a deeper, more natural darkness. Feel the way your heart rate slows to match the rhythm of the wooden click, that imaginary, soothing sound of the loom working on its own. You are not abandoning your life. You are simply reclaiming the space around it. You are giving your own heart the room it needs to breathe. Allow yourself to be held by the silence. If you feel a wave of sadness or a sudden release of long-held tension, let it be. Do not try to manage the emotion. Do not try to weave it into a narrative. Just let it move through you like the wind moving through the mountain valley. You are the space in which these things happen, not the things themselves. You are the weaver, the loom, the thread, and the silence that surrounds them all. There is no need for you to be anyone other than who you are right now. You are safe enough to be exactly this tired, this human, and this present. As you lie here, feel the sensation of the air moving in and out of your nose. It is the most natural, unforced pattern of all. It does not require your permission. It does not wait for you to solve the mystery of your day. It simply arrives and then it departs. And in that simple, rhythmic cycle, you are being kept alive. You are being supported by a system far greater than your own thoughts. Let your breath be your only task. Every time you notice a thought trying to weave itself into a plan, or a judgment, or a regret, simply return to the feeling of the air. Feel the subtle expansion of your ribs, the gentle cooling of your skin, the way your body naturally moves with the tide of your own existence. You have done enough today. You have carried the shuttle through the light and through the shadows, and you have woven a tapestry that is as complex and as real as you are. Now the sun has set. The work is done for the night. The loom is waiting for the morning, and the threads are resting in the soft, dark fabric of the hours to come. You do not have to keep watch. You do not have to hold the pattern together in your sleep. The universe knows how to turn. The stars know how to hold their places, and your life knows how to continue, even while you are resting. Soften your jaw one last time. Let your tongue rest against the floor of your mouth. Feel the weight of your eyelids, the peacefulness of your hands, the absolute, quiet permission to let go of the heavy, cold shuttle and drift for a while into the deeper, unpatterned dark. You are exactly where you need to be, and for this moment that is all that is required. Years later, a young woman named Alara climbed the same mountain path. She was a master of a different craft, a calligrapher whose ink was said to hold the very spirit of the seasons. Alara arrived at the hut because her hands had begun to tremble whenever she picked up her brush. She was terrified that if she could not maintain the absolute, unyielding precision of her strokes, she would lose her reputation, her livelihood, and her sense of worth. She had heard stories of the mountain weaver, who had found a way to work without the heavy strain of the shuttle, and she wanted to know his secret. She brought with her a single, small stone inkwell, carved from black jade, which she held with a grip so tight her knuckles were constantly bruised. She found the old weaver sitting on the porch. He was not weaving, he was simply watching a patch of wildflowers sway in the thin, cool breeze. Alara sat before him and placed the jade inkwell on the wooden planks between them. She told him of her trembling hands and her fear that her life was becoming a series of smudged lines, a ruined scroll that no one would want to read. She spoke of her need to be perfect, not for vanity, but because she felt that any imperfection in her work was a direct reflection of a failure in her own character. She asked him how he could weave without needing to control the threads. She asked him how he could stand the uncertainty of not knowing if the pattern would hold. The old weaver did not answer at first. He reached over and took her jade inkwell. He did not look at it, he held it in his calloused palm, feeling the weight of the stone. Then he stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, where the mountain stream tumbled over smooth, gray river rocks. He gestured for Alara to follow him. They stood by the water, listening to the rushing sound. a chaotic and yet perfectly organized noise. The weaver held the inkwell out over the swirling water. Alara gasped, her hands flying to her chest. She thought he was going to drop it. She thought he was going to destroy the one thing she held most dear, the vessel that defined her craft. He did not drop it. He simply dipped the inkwell into the current, letting the water spill over the edges, washing away the dried, caked ink that had built up inside. He swirled it in the cold stream, letting the grit be carried away by the flow. Then he pulled it back and set it on a flat stone. It was clean. The deep dark green of the jade was vibrant again, free of the old layers of hardened, cracked ink that had darkened its beauty. He looked at Alara and told her that her art was not in the brushstroke alone. Her art was in the space the brush moved through. He then picked up a smooth, flat stone from the riverbank and placed it on the ground in front of her. He handed her a piece of charcoal and asked her to draw a circle. She hesitated. She felt the old panic rising in her chest, the demand for a perfect, geometric, unbroken line. She drew. Her hand shook. The circle was wobbly, the line uneven, and the ending point did not meet the beginning point. She immediately reached to smudge it out, to erase the failure before it could be seen. The weaver caught her wrist. His touch was light but firm. He told her to look at the line, not as a failure, but as a map of the moment she had just lived. The wobble in the line was not a mistake. It was the physical record of her heartbeat in that second. It was the record of her breath. He asked her if the circle was perfect, would it be a real circle, or would it be a mechanical imitation of one? He told her that life does not offer perfect circles. It offers living, breathing, imperfect shapes that change as the wind changes. Alara looked at the wobbly circle. She expected to feel shame, but as she watched the gray charcoal against the white stone, she felt something else. She felt a strange, quiet permission. She realized that she had been trying to erase her own humanity from her work. She had been trying to be a machine, a tool that never faltered, never trembled, and never breathed. She looked at the weaver, who was smiling at the stone. He did not ask her to draw another. He did not ask her to improve. He simply stood there in the wind and let the imperfection be exactly what it was. That night, Alara did not try to plan her practice for the next morning. She did not rehearse the way she would hold her brush. She did not imagine the praise or the criticism she might receive. She sat in the hut and listened to the mountain air. When she woke at dawn, she went to the porch. She did not pick up her brush to force a stroke. She picked up a simple piece of slate. She dipped her brush into the clean jade inkwell. Her hand still trembled. But this time she did not fight the tremor. She let the brush travel with the vibration. The line she drew was jagged, and it was beautiful, and it was entirely her own. She stopped and she breathed. She did not look at it as a finished product. She looked at it as a moment of existence, captured in ink. She realized then that her suffering had never been about the quality of her work. It had been about the belief that she had to be more than human to be worthy of peace. She had been trying to paint a life that could not be touched by change. She had been trying to build a shelter out of ink and paper, but the ink was wet, and the paper was fragile, and the wind was always moving. When she finally accepted that the tremor was part of the line, the fear began to lose its hold. She was not magically cured. Her hands still shook sometimes, but the shaking was no longer a catastrophe. It was just a note in the song of her own life. The weaver watched her from the shadows of the doorway. He said nothing. He did not need to. He saw that she had stopped trying to command the ink to be something other than itself. She had stepped into the flow of her own experience, accepting the wobbly, imperfect, and entirely authentic reality of her own hands. The transformation was not in the circle she drew. It was in the fact that she did not try to erase it. She sat there, with her brush resting on the slate, and for the first time in years, her heart felt quiet. She was not a master of perfection. She was a master of presence, and in the silence of the mountain morning, that was enough to bring her home. This is the deeper transformation we are pointing toward tonight. It is not the arrival at a state of constant, unshakable calm. It is the arrival at a state of constant, unshakable honesty. It is the ability to look at the wobbly circles of your own life and say, this is what is true right now. This is my hand. This is my heart. This is my breath. And because it is true, I do not need to fight it. I can let it be as you listen. Feel how that small shift changes everything. You do not need to be the flawless weaver. You do not need to be the perfect calligrapher. You only need to be the one who sits in the hut, watches the brush move, and trusts the hand that holds it, even when it shakes. The struggle you feel is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are operating under a heavy, invisible law that governs the mind, a law that says you must control the texture of your life to be safe. When we find ourselves locked in this cycle, we are like the weaver who thinks he is responsible for the wind. We fear that if we stop, the tapestry will fall into ruin, that the colors will bleed into one another, and that the pattern will be lost forever. So we grip the shuttle until our knuckles turn white. We rehearse the future to prevent mistakes. We replay the past to find where we went astray, and we judge our own hands for trembling. We turn our pain into a project that must be managed, and we turn our identity into a problem that must be solved. But consider the nature of your own suffering. There is the initial event, the reality of a life that involves change, challenge, and the unexpected. This is the first knot in the silk, the inevitable bump in the road, the truth of existence. We cannot always stop the knots from appearing. They are part of the process, just as the weather is part of the valley. But then, the mind begins its work of layering. We see the knot, and we immediately decide that it should not be there. We believe that if we were better, if we were stronger, or if we were more vigilant, the knot would not exist. We add a second layer of suffering, which is the resistance to what is already true. We pull against the thread, and in our desperation to fix it, we tighten the knot until it is impossible to undo. This is the great paradox of the loom. The knot is just a knot. It has no meaning other than what we assign to it. When you stop fighting the reality of the knot, you stop adding the extra strain that keeps it tight. You are not choosing to have problems. You are choosing to stop treating the presence of a problem as a personal failure. You are learning to sit with the reality of the situation without adding the self-judgment that makes the situation feel unbearable. When you let go of the need to control every outcome, you are not becoming passive. You are becoming a conscious witness. You are moving from a state of frantic, terrified management to a state of calm, observant participation. The fear of uncertainty is perhaps the most difficult thread to manage. We are taught to believe that if we can just predict the next row of stitches, we will be safe. We spend our evenings trying to solve tomorrow before it has even arrived. As if by worrying, we are weaving a shield against the future. But the future is not a pattern you can force. It is an unfolding that occurs in its own time. When you try to grasp the future, you are only stealing energy from the present. You are using the shuttle to strike at the air, hoping to tame the wind. The Buddhist wisdom here is gentle, but it is firm. Peace is not found by making the future predictable. Peace is found by trusting your ability to meet the future with a steady heart, regardless of what it brings. Think about how you speak to yourself when things do not go as planned. Do you offer yourself the same kindness you would offer to a fellow weaver? Or do you become a harsh critic, blaming yourself for the fact that life is complex? Self-judgment is a form of resistance that serves no purpose other than to drain your strength. It is like pulling the silk so hard that it snaps. You believe that if you are hard enough on yourself, you will force yourself to be perfect. But perfection is a static, frozen thing. It is not real. It is a ghost. It has no place in the living, breathing, changing reality of your days. You can set down the hammer of judgment without losing your sense of purpose. You can move through your life with intention, and with care, and with standards, without needing to hate yourself for every imperfection. There is a deep, quiet relief in accepting that you do not need to be the source of your own life. You are a part of a wider, ancient rhythm. Just as the mountain stream does not worry about where it will flow, you do not need to worry about the ultimate design of your days. The loom is already turning. The threads are already moving. You are invited to be the presence that watches, the presence that assists, and the presence that rests. When you stop trying to be the entire system, you find that you are more capable than you ever were when you were exhausted. You are more creative when you are not afraid. You are more compassionate when you are not preoccupied with your own self-protection. This integration of wisdom is a slow process. It does not happen in a single night. It happens in the thousands of tiny moments where you have the choice between resistance and acceptance. It happens when you are waiting for an outcome, and you notice your chest tightening, and you choose to take one slow breath instead of spiraling into a story about what might go wrong. It happens when you catch yourself replaying a mistake, and you gently stop the playback, reminding yourself that you are human and that you are allowed to learn. It happens when you stop trying to earn your worth through your productivity and start honoring your existence through your presence. You are not a machine meant to produce perfection. You are a human being meant to experience the fullness of reality. The pain you feel is real and it is valid, but you do not have to carry it in a way that turns it into a cage. You can acknowledge the pain, you can hold it with compassion, and you can let it be part of your story without allowing it to define your identity. You are not your worries. You are not your past mistakes. You are the space in which these things arise, and you are the awareness that can hold them with grace. When you understand this, the world changes. It does not become easier, but it becomes lighter. You become less brittle. You become more fluid, more capable of bending without breaking, and more willing to trust that even in the midst of uncertainty, you are fundamentally held. As we go deeper into the night, notice how your mind begins to look for things to solve, even now. Notice the urge to analyze what we have said, to turn this into another task you must master. Let that urge go. You do not need to master this. You do not need to turn this wisdom into a set of rules. This is not about building a better fortress for your ego. It is about letting the walls come down so that you can finally breathe. The loom of your life is working perfectly well without your interference tonight. The threads are settling, the tension is easing, and the pattern is unfolding in the darkness, beyond your need to see it, beyond your need to manage it. You are safe enough to let the work be done by someone else for a few hours. You are safe enough to be, and not just to do, feel the heavy velvet quality of the air, the stillness of your own skin, the way the night itself is weaving a blanket of rest around your shoulders. You have done the work of being a human today, and that is a task that never ends. But for now, the shuttle is resting on the floor, and the room is very, very quiet. Nothing is required of you but this simple, rhythmic rising and falling of your breath. Everything else can wait for the light. This wisdom is not reserved for the mountain hut or the silence of a temple. It is meant to walk with you through the noisy, cluttered, and demanding hours of your actual life. Think of your daily routine as the very cloth you are weaving. When you are standing in a crowded room, or waiting for a message that does not arrive, or lying in bed while your mind replays a mistake you made 3 years ago, you are still at the loom. You are still the weaver. The difference is that now you have the choice to put down the iron shuttle of judgment. You have the choice to stop pulling on threads that have already snapped. Consider the moments when you check your phone for reassurance, hoping for a sign that you are loved, or that you are on the right track, or that someone else will finally fix your feeling of emptiness. In those moments, you are searching for a pattern that someone else is supposed to have created for you. You are hoping that their words will secure the loose ends of your own tapestry. But if you watch closely, you will see that the anxiety does not leave even when you receive the reply you wanted. The hunger is not for the message. The hunger is for the feeling of being okay within yourself. Next time you feel that pull, try to pause before you reach out. Feel the tension in your chest. Notice the urgency in your hands. Acknowledge that you are searching for safety in a place that cannot hold it. You can be present with the discomfort. You can sit with the empty space without having to fill it immediately with external validation. Maybe you find yourself comparing your life to the vibrant, seemingly perfect tapestries of others. You look at their work and you feel that your own threads are dull, or knotted, or poorly arranged. You feel behind in life. You feel that you should have achieved more, or woven a more intricate pattern by now. But you are only seeing the front of their cloth, never the tangled backside where they hide their own loose ends and knots. Comparison is just another way of pulling on your own threads until they fray. It is the act of trying to weave someone else's pattern into your own. Return your focus to your own hands. The only tapestry you are actually responsible for is the one you are weaving right here, right now. It is okay if it looks different. It is okay if it is not finished. There will be days when you feel the pressure to smile while you are aching inside. because you fear that if you show the truth of your exhaustion, the people around you will be disappointed. You worry that if you stop being the one who carries everyone else's burden, the entire structure will collapse. This is the exhaustion of the master weaver, who has forgotten that he is human. You can be caring without absorbing the pain of the world. You can be supportive without sacrificing your own need for quiet. You do not have to be the strongest person in the room to be a person of value. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for those you love is to be honest about your own fatigue, to set down the shuttle for an hour, and to let them see you simply resting. When you are lying awake at night, and the shadows of your regrets begin to stretch across the ceiling, remind yourself that you are not in the past. You are in the present room, on the present bed. The mistakes you are replaying are just old threads that you are trying to reweave, but they cannot be changed now. They are part of the pattern, and they are fixed. You do not have to spend your energy trying to redo what has already been done. If a regret arises, meet it with a soft internal acknowledgement. Say to yourself, "This is the feeling of wishing things were different," and that is a human feeling. But I do not have to live inside of it. You can let the thought exist like a shadow on the wall, without inviting it to take up space in your heart. Practice the small discipline of the pause. When you feel the familiar surge of frustration or the heat of self-reproach, do not act immediately. Give yourself the space of 2 breaths in that short, quiet interval. You are not a slave to your reaction. You are the conscious weaver observing the movement of your own mind. You might notice that after those 2 breaths, the urge to lash out, or to criticize yourself, or to spiral into fear, has lost its sharpest edge. You are creating a space for wisdom to enter, a small open clearing in the middle of a dense forest. You have been taught that if you are not constantly working, you are failing. You feel guilty when you rest because you equate stillness with laziness. But your spirit needs the quiet as much as your loom needs the silence between the clicks. Rest is not the absence of work. Rest is the maintenance of the weaver. It is the time when the threads gather their strength, when the tension naturally releases, and when the pattern reveals its own internal logic. You do not need to earn your rest through productivity. You have earned your rest simply by being alive, by being a witness to your own existence, and by navigating the complexities of your days with the best heart you have. There is an incredible, untapped freedom in choosing not to obey every thought that crosses your mind. You have hundreds of thoughts every hour, many of them frantic, many of them critical, many of them fearful. Most of them are just noise. They are not truths. They are not commands. You do not have to follow them down the road they suggest. When a thought tells you that you are behind, or that you are not enough, or that you need to be doing something else right now, treat it as you would a passing bird. It is allowed to fly through the sky of your mind. It is not allowed to sit on your shoulder and tell you how to live. As you go about your week, look for the moments where you are gripping the shuttle too hard. It might be in the way you hold your steering wheel, the way you tighten your stomach at work, or the way you hold your breath when you are waiting for an email. These are all physical signals that you have forgotten to trust the loom. Each time you notice this, you have the power to change the relationship. You do not have to stop working. You do not have to abandon your duties. You only have to soften the hand that is doing the work. You can be engaged, and you can be effective, and you can be present, all while keeping your palms open and your heart unburdened. This is the path of the mountain weaver, brought down from the thin air of the peaks and placed directly into the center of your busy, complicated, beautiful life. It is a path that does not lead away from the world, but deeper into it. You are not meant to transcend your life, but to inhabit it with a clearer, kinder awareness. You are not meant to eliminate the knots, but to see them as part of the beauty of the design. You are not meant to stop the loom, but to stop being the one who desperately pulls the threads. You are here to witness the weaving, to support the process, and to find, in the middle of the clicking and the noise, the quiet, unshakable peace that was always waiting for you to notice it. Feel the weight of this understanding settling into your bones, anchoring you, and preparing your heart for the deep, restorative dark that is waiting for you now. The loom is silent now. The rhythm of your own breathing has become the only thread that matters. There is no need for you to keep your hands raised in readiness. There is no need for you to inspect the fabric for mistakes. The wooden frame of the loom, the structure of your own life, is holding everything in place without your help. You can feel the tension draining from your skin, from the spaces between your fingers, and from the deep, tired muscles of your shoulders. The heavy iron shuttle has been set aside. It rests on the floor of your room, its weight no longer pulling at your arm, its coldness no longer demanding your attention. You have done the work of being present, and now the work is simply to dissolve into the quiet. The mountain hut in your mind is dark and cool. The scent of dry cedar remains in the air, a comforting, earthy anchor that keeps you tethered to this moment. Outside, the valley has fallen into a profound, soft slumber. The trees do not worry about the wind, and the rocks do not worry about the rain. They simply exist in the vast, unpatterned darkness. You are part of this landscape. You are not separate from the silence. When you stop trying to manage the weave, you find that you are woven into the very fabric of the night. There is nowhere else to be. There is nothing else to solve. The thoughts that were once so urgent, those sharp, insistent threads that kept you awake, are now just distant whispers. They are like shadows on the wall that have no substance and no command. You can let them drift, like loose strands caught in a gentle current. You do not need to straighten them. You do not need to pull them taut. Let them be loose. Let them be messy. Let them be whatever they are in the darkness. Your awareness does not need to be sharp anymore. It can be wide and soft and heavy, like the velvet curtain of the night falling over a room that has been open for far too long. Feel the weight of your legs sinking into the mattress. They are supported by the earth, which has been turning for millions of years, without needing your guidance. Feel the heaviness in your chest, the quiet rhythm of your heart beating in the dark. Each beat is a pulse in the pattern, a steady, unforced movement that happens entirely on its own. You are being lived. You are being held. The life you have been trying so hard to direct is finally, mercifully, taking care of you. There is a deep, ancient comfort in realizing that you are not the one who makes the morning arrive. You are not the one who pulls the sun over the horizon or directs the rotation of the stars. You are only the guest of this existence, and tonight, you are invited to rest. Let your jaw unhinge. Let your tongue rest, heavy and still, on the floor of your mouth. Let the skin of your face become smooth, unlined by the efforts of the day. You are not building anything tonight. You are not repairing anything. You are simply fading into the safety of the dark. Think of the jade inkwell, now clean and empty, resting on the flat stone by the stream. It does not worry about the next stroke of the brush. It does not regret the ink that has washed away. It simply sits, waiting for the light to return, content to be exactly what it is in the absence of demand. You are like that inkwell. You are empty, you are clean, and you are waiting for nothing. You have set down the heavy brush. You have stopped trying to draw perfect lines. The ink of your worry has been carried away by the water of your own acceptance. Notice how the darkness has no edges. It is a soft, endless space that welcomes you without judgment. It does not ask for your credentials. It does not ask for your progress or your perfection. It only asks that you finally lay down the weight of your own identity. You are not the weaver. You are the space where the weaving happens. You are the stillness that allows the pattern to exist, and in this stillness, there is a peace that surpasses all the effort you have ever expended. If your mind reaches out for a thought, if it tries to grab onto a task or a memory, simply notice the reach and let it fall. Your hand is too tired to hold on. Your heart is too full of rest to engage with the noise. Just let the reaching fall away, like a thread slipping from an exhausted finger. You are drifting further from the shore of your concerns, and the water is warm, and the tide is slow. There is a deep, resonant silence that is beginning to fill the room, a silence that knows your name and does not require you to be anything other than this. You are safe enough to stop keeping watch. The loom will be there in the morning, the threads will still be there, and the pattern will continue its unfolding. But for now, the shuttles are still. The clicking has ceased, and the work has been put aside. There is only this breathing, this darkness, and the profound, simple truth of your own presence. You are enough. You have always been enough, even when your hands were shaking and your knots were tight. The value of the tapestry was never in its perfection. but in the life that was lived while it was being made. As the last remnants of the day dissolve into the quiet, let your awareness retreat from the world of things, of tasks, and of people. Let it settle into the center of your being, where there is no language, no plan, and no urgency. You are drifting into the deep, unpatterned sea of rest. You are being invited to let go of the very last thread of your own design. If you could stop trying to be the author of your own life for just one night, and simply be the breath that moves through it, what would remain of you when all the stories had finally faded away?